seems to be working. We have, yes, people are joining in. Oh my. Looks like you guys are making it in all right. Thank you, Harm. Wonderful. Hoping we have all the same people that we did before. It looks like we probably do. I think it was 11, 12. Yeah, that seems like the same amount of people that we had before. I don't remember there being much more. Okay, so I'm glad you all made it back. Sorry about that again. Let's just start back up where we were. Oh, we have a 13th person. Fantastic. Where did my slideshow go? There we go. Okay. Laptop has also been very slow these days, which is very frustrating. In fact, this down so my computer has some more bandwidth to use. Okay. So I think we have everybody back in. So I'm just gonna start off where I was. Anyway, so I created this work last fall. It sat around in my apartment for quite a while. And it wasn't up until recently that I settled on this title, Witnessing the Death of Eros, A Gentle Touch of Thanatos, or Thanatos. Sorry, now I'm reading the typo. But this title came to be because of, actually, I'm going to let you guys sit on that for a little bit. I'm not going to try and explain everything right now. So I'm going to keep going, let you guys sit on that. We can come back around to it during the Q&A, as long as all the other titles or any other questions you may have. Moving on here. This is the beginning of a series of 5, in which the series I call the Masks series, given that they all have to do with this mask that I'm wearing in the photograph. These are a series of photographs, digital photographs. The prints are about, I believe they're 4x6 inch prints, so they're actually quite small, but they're framed in 8x12 inch frames. They have acrylic applied onto them via various different techniques. And in this photograph, I was exploring at the time this idea of identity relating to medication. As many of you know, some of you may not know, I have for much of my life, most of my life, taken medication for ADHD. And I can't really ever remember a time that I didn't have it, apart from maybe a day, maybe 2 days at a time, if they're switching over from a cycle pill bottle to another one. And back in my sophomore year of college, I was on a medication called Cotempla, which is name brand medication. And every 2 weeks, I would get 2 boxes, 2 cardboard boxes. And each one of the boxes, there would be a hard plastic travel case. There would be a full instruction booklet, and each pill was individually blister wrapped. And so, as you can imagine, it creates quite a large amount of waste. And after a while, I said, hey, I think I should start collecting and keeping these. And I didn't know what for. I didn't know when I would use them or how, but I just collected them. I started collecting them. Eventually, I switched onto a generic version, so I stopped getting this Cotempla brand. But I accumulated quite a large number of these blister packets of these boxes and cases and instruction manuals. And I had this idea last semester last year, to use them to create a mask because I often have felt like in my life that I wear a mask through my medication. That's a large part of where I am, and at the time I thought who I was due to this medication that I would take in the morning, and not many people would see me off my medication outside of maybe my family or some close friends. And so I made this mask. I got a simple white party mask from a Halloween party costume store, and I got some rubber cement, and I just started putting these blister packets onto the mask. And then I put the mask on and I photographed myself in a variety of positions. Um, and from there, I took those photographs, I printed them, and I used several different application techniques to apply or manipulate acrylic paint on top of these prints. And that is what you're looking at now. And yeah, this series was something that I've shown this series once before at a small apartment showing back last semester. Um, but yeah, I'm not sure if I have anything else right now to say about these. But I'm going to scroll. I'm going to let you guys look at these for a minute here, just so you can kind of internalize them um, and notice them and think about the different um, compositional things that are going on with these pieces. Um, yes, and you can see the titles there at the bottom too. Again, this is a series of 5. The Masks series, they all have their own individual unique titles though. All right, moving on. This next photograph and the one after it is a series of 2. I call this the Damaged series. This first one is called It Was a Living Nightmare. This is a, well, they're both burnt digital photography prints, or prints of those, I should say. So to be clear of what you're looking at here, what I did was I took photographs of myself in my apartment, lying down on a tarp on the floor of my apartment. And from there, I took those photographs, I edited them, I made prints of those photographs. And then I took lighters or a lighter, and I took it to that print of that photograph. And this image you're looking at now is a photograph of that burnt print that now hangs within the gallery. These prints measure at about 36 by 48 inches around there. Um, the original prints themselves are only about 13 by 19. The original burnt photography prints are about 13 by 19 inches. The photographs of these that you're looking at, I printed at about 36 by 40, 36 by 40, 45, something like that. This one is titled Everything Else Is Nothing. And like I said, these are in a series of 2. I can really consider them to be brother pieces or sister pieces or sibling pieces, if you will. Hence the semicolon connecting the 2. I really wanted to have them be read both independently as their own entities, but that together they would make a brand new thing, like how you can take 2 independent clauses, but you can combine them with a semicolon to make a new complete phrase with the 2, even though on their own they can grammatically stand. These pieces on their own can stand together. I believe that they create a dialogue in tandem with each other. Yes. And originally I was trying to think about whether or not I wanted to show them as prints or not, or show. Sorry, I should say whether I wanted to show them as the actual burnt prints or not, the physically burnt printed photographs of those. I ended up deciding on the large scale photographs of the prints as a way of not only being able to scale them up much larger, but also as a means of allowing there to be a little bit of disconnection. Um, between the viewer and the artwork, to kind of allow them to just see the surface, not necessarily be able to catch all the little um, glimpses and bends and cracks and things like that. But yes, that is these two pieces here. For these, funny story, real quick. To take them, obviously you're probably wondering, I was lying on the floor. I I put command hooks on the ceiling of my apartment and duct taped them down, and then I hung my camera by its camera strap onto these hooks, and then I triggered the self timer via an app on my phone. Because again, all these works were made alone. I didn't have anyone else to help me. I had to do everything start to finish by myself. And so that's a fun little tidbit there. This piece, which I will as a disclaimer say right now, is not the exact same piece that you would see hanging up in the gallery here where I am at North Park, but it's very similar. This piece is Finding Myself, Finding Comfort in the Void. It is a cyanotype that I made very recently, this semester actually. For those who don't know, cyanotype, more colloquially known as a blueprint. When you think about the classic blueprints from movies or TVs, or some of you may work on construction sites and actually know about blueprints. Back before digital technology was widely available or even mainstream for the consumer, blueprints were made using cyanotypes. That's why they're called blueprints, because the chemicals reacted in such a way that it became blue. And the process of that was coating the paper that you wished to expose the print onto with a combination of two chemicals. I can't remember the exact names, but it's not important. You would coat the paper that, let it dry over a period of 20, 30 minutes. And then you would put a transparent negative onto the paper. And then you'd expose it with some type of UV light. You could use sunlight, you could use UV bulbs. And you'd use a negative because as you expose the paper, the more light that the paper receives, the darker it is. And so the white areas on here actually received little to no light hitting them before they were developed. And the dark areas received the most light. And we started this process in my advanced printmaking class this semester. And I don't know if it was the color or the process, the physical hands-on process of it, but I became enthralled by the cyanotype process. And I knew I needed to do something with it. And I was in my apartment, probably early January, not early January, maybe late January, maybe early February. And I was doing the same thing I was doing again, just experimenting, just trying things out, just photographing myself in different positions, not thinking too hard about it, just doing the first thing that came to me. And eventually I came across this idea of bending over backwards over a stool in my apartment and photographing myself with a self timer from a distance. And so from there, I took that photograph, took it into Photoshop, and just isolated the figure. And from there, I was able to create this floating, ascended, transparent negative that I used to develop this cyanotype with. And it's funny, the original orientation, right? The stool was like right here, right? And then the ground was here. And another funny fact here for you is because I was on a stool, it displaced the skin around my butt and thigh, and so I had to go back into Photoshop and actually digitally alter this area to add those features and curves back in. And so you look at this print, and this is not actually what my butt looks like, to put it plainly. I'm not really sure how to sugarcoat that. But yeah, I always thought that was a funny thing. But this work was the last work to be made. Yeah, it was the last work to be made. It's hard to because a lot of them finished around the same time, but this was the last one to be made for the show. And yeah, I'll leave it there, and I'll move on to the last piece that's part of my show, which is a sculptural piece actually. Um, and the title of this one is "The only thing more consistent than my need for medication is my need to know myself." This is a sculpture made out of an orange 5-gallon bucket that I picked up from a Home Depot, some styrofoam that I molded into a bottle cap, and some homemade clay tablets, pill tablets that I had to make by hand. That took a long time to make. It's a very simple recipe actually. You just need flour, water, oil, and salt, and then a little bit of food coloring, some red food coloring. And then from there, I made those discs. I cut them out using cups. And I got a cursor. I see that's documentation. I see them on my tablets, and then you let them dry, and then you get some nice hard clay discs. Um, and the label, which I also had to do, I had to design from scratch. I didn't make it from scratch. Oh, I did. The design, I should say, I made it from scratch. I didn't design it from scratch. The design is actually a direct interpolation of the same design that's on my actual pill bottle that I get from CVS Pharmacy, lovely CVS Pharmacy. And I have a couple more photographs here of it. Let's see, where did I end up putting those? Yes, right here. Get some different angles here for you guys. So this is still, this was around the same time again that I was really looking into and exploring this idea of identity and medication, and how those two things, how that dynamic works, especially in my own personal life. And so I wanted to not only just make a large scale pill bottle, but I wanted to manipulate the everyday mundane aspects of this object, to kind of create a dialogue around the piece itself. And so I made little adjustments to things. As you can see here, and I'll read it out for you so you don't turn your head. Normally it says, take one tablet by mouth once a day or something like that. I changed it to just say take one tablet by mouth every day for the rest of your life. And on the side here, during the important information, starts out fairly simple. It says, drug may impair ability to operate a vehicle, vessel, or machine. Use care. Second point, may cause dizziness. Third point, do not wonder what you might be like off of your medication, or if it has, or if your personality has been changed significantly as a result of taking this medication. And then finally, do not chew or swallow this medication, or do not chew while swallowing. Of course, you have to swallow. Yeah, and all pills have that the series of numbers and letters attached to them that get printed on for identification purposes. And so I did that here as well. RX for you, prescription for you. And yeah, I wanted to make it this large scale to really have it have some weight in the room. I feel like a lot of us take these medications, and there are these very small things. Pill bottles are small, and the pills are even smaller. You can hold them in your hand and conceal them, but really they're these quite significant things that they can do anything from just relieve pain or mild symptoms to keep you alive. And for some people that also comes at a great cost. And people will spend most of their available liquid money or wages just to buy medication to stay alive. And it's this thing that is so small but has such a big impact in my life and many other people's lives. And so I wanted the scale to reflect that. So that is my rationale for making it this large scale here. So to finish up here, those are the 11 works in the show. And we can hop back to any of those questions. If anybody has any, feel free to unmute your mic and just say, if you want to type it into the chat, that's also acceptable, either way. And actually, I don't know if this, I think it's Teams that has like the goofy, like, I'm raising my hand thing, but so actually maybe we should just do questions in the chat. That way we don't have to talk over each other, or if we have a hard time hearing or anything. So if you have any questions, type them into the chat. Let me know, or any thoughts, anything else like that, and I will answer them as they come in. Need to take a little water break. Also, that's Belinda there in the background, if you can't see her. She has done a wonderful job. She's one of the few people today, not few, but she's one of the handful of people today who was here with me the entire day, helped me out, set everything up. So big shout out to Belinda, as well as Tim Lowley, Emmanuel Carrillo, Emma Sosa. Big helps getting the whole thing set up. Let's see here in the chat. Annika Roberts asked, were there any specific artists or photographers that inspired you for these works? Great question. That's a really great question. There were definitely a couple, but not too many, surprisingly. And the photographers or work that inspired me often came from things that I would encounter on the internet. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I post a lot onto my story. I post artwork and beautiful things that I find on the internet, whether it's already on Instagram or from Reddit or anywhere else. When it comes to like this Polaroid piece, for example, the rationale behind wanting to do the original collage that I was attempting to do there was due to a work that I had seen online. It was a Polaroid collage, and I just thought that concept was so cool because it kind of embodied the kind of Picasso Cubist aesthetic from his oil paintings back in like the 17th century. Don't quote me on that. Not a history major. I wanted to try to emulate that. Obviously, that didn't end up happening, but that was the original inspiration for that. Besides that, actually, a really good artist who inspired me was, I want to say her name was Emily Wartendijk. Her last name was definitely Wartendijk. I'm not sure about her first name. If you go to MCA's website, that's the Museum of Contemporary Art, they have a lot of her work in their online, not storage, but what's the word I'm looking for? Archives. Thank you. Archives. Their online archives. And she was the first person I saw who did this mixed multimedia of acrylic on a photograph. She did it a little bit differently though. I'll explain it briefly. She took found photographs from the Library of Congress and other historical databases of lynchings from back during the Jim Crow era. And she would take these photographs and all she would do is just paint over the lynched black body in the photograph with acrylic, just a single color, and make it a silhouette. And I remember seeing that, and the way that it broke the rigid kind of context and time that photograph was set in, and kind of let it transcend time periods and decades, just from that simple act, was really inspiring to me. And obviously my work is not the same subject matter or the same content, but in terms of aesthetic or an actual way of creating artwork, that was definitely a big influence for me for that. So great question, Annika. Let's see here. Gavin Stockton asks, is your artwork now found throughout the gallery? Are there pieces that you did not put in the gallery? Another great question. Yes, so all the pieces are up in the gallery here behind me. at the end, I may take the video camera here and do a quick walkthrough because obviously the experience is different than seeing them on a screen. But yeah, so they are up. And are there any artworks that I did not put in the show? Um, there's one work that I had made recently that I consider as an alternate, but I wasn't. It didn't speak to me nearly the same way that any of the works in the show did. What there was a lot of though was there a lot of ideas that I did not capitalize on. I had during this whole process, even from last semester, there were so many different things I wanted to try or explore, not only in terms of content, but in terms of aesthetic or creative process or media to use. And that there were some things that I thought I was definitely going to do that didn't end up going into the show. Maybe some digital collages, perhaps some more experimental uses or figurative uses of multimedia work, of mixing acrylic onto prints or other types of media. And especially for this show in particular, I had a lot of different ideas about installations or ways to kind of transform the space. But as often happens to me, my ambition is bigger than my actual capabilities. For a while, I wanted to actually color the entire space, wall and floor in stripes, like colored stripes that go throughout the entire gallery. But then when I thought about the actual labor involved with painting the entire gallery different colors and also somehow putting colored like paneling or acrylic or vinyl, something on the floor, I realized that that was just not rational, especially for the very marginal impact and addition it would make to the actual message of the show. But yeah, that was a great question, Gavin. Let's see what else we have here. Rebecca says she is very impressed in the for me to take on such a difficult topic. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Very much appreciate the feedback. Much love to my friends and family back in Grand Rapids. Maya Rayner has a question here. She says, can you talk more about the process in your work? It seems that the method for composing or constructing the work is important to you. How important is it for the viewer to understand the process of making? Are you interested in exposing the process more directly in the pieces? Very loaded question there. Very good questions though from Miss Maya Rayner. So let's start at the beginning. Can I talk more about the process of my work? It seems that the method is important to me. It is important to me. And let's see, let me just try and internalize how important is it for the viewer to understand the process of making. Let's start there. How important is it for the viewer to understand the process of the making? I would say it is less important than understanding the mood or the energy or the emotions of the work itself. You know, if I didn't describe the actual creation process or creative process behind any of this work at all, the most important thing would be being able to kind of understand the dialogue that the work has, not only from just each piece to you, the viewer, but the dialogue that the pieces create themselves, which again is more difficult to do in a virtual setting as opposed to the gallery setting here. But yeah, so it is important, or at least significant to an extent, that the viewer understands the actually creation process of the work. And we still have 10 minutes, so we don't need to end the meeting quite yet. But yes, it's more important that the viewer be able to really look at the different components compositionally of the works themselves and see how they're working in tangent with each other, and what the dialogue might be created there. And I could reveal more about how the works were made, but again, that seems more secondary to talking about what the works represent themselves. Um, so yeah, very much the concept behind the work would be primary. There would be priority number one. Um, but I can talk a little bit more about the process for these. I'll talk about the process in general, not per work. Um, so again, my process for creating all these and really for my entire creative practice and perhaps other artists in the chat can relate to this is very much focused on experimentation. Um, I back when I first started creating artwork, really just creating photographs before I even considered myself to be an artist, I tried to plan them and to control them and to make sure every little aspect of it was what I wanted it to be. And I still do suffer from that drive for perfectionism. Um, but what I've had to force myself to learn, especially through this process, is that it is often better to just try things, to just try things and see what happens. Um, to start with an idea or maybe a concept and seeing just brainstorming and manipulating things to seeing how you can execute on that concept. For example, with these short, actually, I'll just pull up photographs here. Oh wait, I gotta share the screen first. With the Masks series here. Sure. Oh, not quite yet. Oh wait, yes it is. Okay. Let me pull those up here. Okay. Gotta go this way, yes. So for this Masks series, these were the result of extreme experimentation. I had the prints, and I liked the prints, but I knew I wanted to um, do something with them. I didn't know what, and I wanted to explore this idea of mixed media processes, but I didn't know exactly what to do. So what I ended up doing was just trying things out. I in my apartments with all the materials I had, seeing what I could do. So for example, like with this one, this was something that I actually was completely not expecting. As you can see, the purple and kind of salmon highlights here are very particular in their positions. And I can tell you for certain I did not have control over that. What ended up happening was when printing this photograph off, there is on my printer a special ink called Chroma Optimizer that is kind of a sealant clear coat that goes over the photograph to reduce glare. But it doesn't, by default, cover purely white areas. It actually skips those because the glare is usually, and the purely white piece of paper, the glare is not that noticeable. Um, and so what ended up happening was those areas were not sealed by this Chroma Optimizer. And when I put the acrylic on and then washed it off, the acrylic easily washed off of the rest of the photograph, but it seeped in and absorbed into those areas. Um, and I could never have predicted that or planned that or known that ahead of time, but that's what happened. And it happened just as a result of happenstance, perhaps, chance, maybe, but really as a result of experimentation. Um, and same thing with these. This one, for example, was a simple process. I had some purple acrylic and I got some saran wrap. So everyday saran wrap in my kitchen, crumpled it up into a ball, dipped it into a puddle of the acrylic, and just started wiping or blotting, maybe swishing around on this print, um, just very lightly and not too aggressively. And I didn't even have another print to do a second trial with. This ended up being what happened. Um, and it's experimentation, it's trying things out. And I can tell you certainly, and Maya, you know this, that um, it doesn't always work out. In fact, it often doesn't work out, this experimentation. But when it does, it does in a very miraculous, very, very beautiful way. Um, and that's what happened with all these works, really. None of these works, as they are now, are what I thought they would be, because things happen along the way, things change. Um, and I think that's really one of the biggest takeaways from the show, is that things change along the way, people change along the way. I've changed along the way in ways that I couldn't expect. When I think about who I am now as opposed to who I was 4 3, even just last year, I have become a person and am continuing to grow into a person that I could not have foreseen myself being. And that is what this show is a representation of the unexpected and beautiful ways, perhaps even scary or dark ways, that I have changed and grown and moved and navigated through my own life, and that we all do, inevitably. Um, Great question there from Maya. Okay, let's take one more question because we're running out of time here. Let's see. We have one from Terry Stockton. Did the process of creating the pieces for the show provide any personal insights? Yes, I believe I touched on this a lot with what I just said, but I'll try to talk to this very briefly here. And a similar question for Anna Singh. How do you see your personal discoveries from the show influencing your future work? Okay, so that's kind of a two-part question. Fantastic. So in terms of personal discoveries, I realized, honestly, the biggest thing I realized was in the creation of this work, as you had seen, a lot of the figures are nude, or I should say naked. There's definitely a distinction between those two. A lot of the figures are naked, and I, for a while, I was unsure of why I did that. Perhaps I didn't want there to be any distraction, any branding, any other connotations, but really the biggest thing for me was, it was a way for me to confront my own body insecurities, in a constructive and self-loving, self-caring way, because many people, including myself, have often looked at themselves in the mirror and found things that were wrong. But in using myself, naked to create artwork, it's a way of seeing myself and accepting myself in a way that isn't demeaning or negative, or it doesn't take away anything from who I am. It allows myself to see myself in a light that, in a way that is beautiful, in a way that says something, that means something to me, that is important. And so it really helped me kind of center in on, um, my own insecurities, not just about my body, but about a lot of things about myself, identity, medication, many other aspects here. But everyone, we have less than 1 minute. Thank you so much for joining my Zoom call and joining my virtual artist talk. It means the world to me that you guys care enough to come and ask me questions and hear what I have to say. And yeah, I love you all so much. Thank you, and have a wonderful night. Thank you for your questions, and I hope to see you all very, very soon.
Bye, Connor. It was great.